Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Of course, a couple of days ago, and I did make an exclusive about this. For those of you watching on YouTube, keep in mind, pinned comment down below with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. That's where I make the exclusive content. 2 videos a day, soon it'll be 3. I pointed out that a couple of days ago when the judge decided to weigh in on the legal terminology allowed during the case, the prosecution has been forbidden from using the term victims to describe those that Rittenhouse shot. A lot of people immediately misconstrued it, both people who support and oppose it, usually for political or racial reasons, immediately said, well, this shows that the judge is on Rittenhouse's side. They can call them rioters and looters, the defense can, but the prosecution can't say victims. This was just to not prejudice a jury, because there were riots and looting going on at the time, ergo that terminology is fine. But the problem is if you refer to those that he shot as victims, you prejudice the jury by insinuating that they didn't do anything wrong that could cause a situation where they deserve to be shot and he acted in self-defense. But that's really what happened. Kyle Rittenhouse went there to Kenosha, borrowed a friend's gun, so the trafficking never happened, to put out fires. He was attacked. He was also, it appears, shot at one point. Now, somebody informed me that my timeline of events was slightly out of sync, that there was, like, one of the attacks happened, and he fled at some point, then a shot was fired, then others got involved. Maybe so, but the timeline they're offering leads to the same conclusion, which was that in every case where Rittenhouse fired a shot, killing 2 people, injuring a third, it was self-defense. He was being assaulted. A shot had been fired. He's looking around. He's getting chased at one point. I think if I remember correctly, someone threw a can or something at him too. He ended up falling down. A person attempted to grab his firearm, which is a terrible idea. A person aimed a gun at him, despite him not being engaged with that person at the time. And it looks like, in at least a couple of these cases, it looks like the others thought that he was firing shots in an aggressive fashion, misconstruing the situation, and one thing led to another. But it's about time that Americans stop being afraid to point out, yes, Rittenhouse indeed, fairly objectively, is not guilty of any crime. He acted in self-defense. The shootings were justified. It's very, very funny to me that Rittenhouse, when he was raising money for the case, because these cases can run into the many hundreds of thousands of dollars, by the way, if you have a decent lawyer, his initial GoFundMe was downed. Meanwhile, the dude who he shot in the hand, who could face charges, he could face charges related to aiming a weapon at a person. If Rittenhouse is found not guilty on the murder 2 charges and stuff, if he's found completely innocent and scot-free, and he could turn around potentially and sue, I would think, GoFundMe, number 1, potentially for defamation, although that's a roundabout, as well as this individual who pointed a gun at him. Of course, not allowed to randomly point a gun at a person. If the person was justified in the initial actions that led to you pointing the gun, doesn't that call into question the legality of whipping out your gun and pointing it in the first place? And I believe the dude was a felon and not allowed to own a gun anyway. Very interesting how that doesn't get mentioned, but Rittenhouse being under 18 while having a firearm is, as though there's some major law involved with that. In some states that might be a misdemeanor, but I'm pretty sure it's not a significant charge anywhere in the country, and I'm not sure that there's any particular federal guidance on this, ergo the 10th Amendment. But let's not mince words. The only people that were breaking that law that night were the people starting fires and looting things. Rittenhouse showed up to lessen the damage as a volunteer and then was assaulted by other people. I see a lot of people that aren't willing to speak out about cases like this at this point anymore. I think that they're afraid of being called bigoted. Well, let me tell you one perk about being a profuse content creator that weighs in on news and politics. You've been called everything anyway. It doesn't matter what you get called. At some point, it just washes off your back like rainwater, because you're like, I got called a xenophobe. Well, that's the 3rd time this week. Now let me file it with the other instances of people misconstruing what I'm about, so I no longer care. I think a lot of people don't want to weigh in on cases like this, especially in any sense that they're identifiable. They're afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of the craptivists, like getting them axed from their job. Oh, this evil Nazi is working for your corporation. We know they're an evil Nazi because they have a free Kyle Rittenhouse sticker on their car. Here, we got their here's their identifying information. We know that they work for Duncan Construction or Big Daddy's Pizza. Inside joke about prank calls, by the way. Let's get them. Let's picket outside their workplace and intimidate the owners into firing this employee. Well, that's getting a little bit more rare because I think at some point you've compelled all of the cuck employers to fire everyone. Some of them have gone out of business as a result of it, and some of them have gotten desensitized and tired of it. Even the craptivists now, they seem to be, in general, a little bit more lazy. But it's about time that Americans speak out also about leftoid violence in general. Not mincing words here, again, the vast majority of political violence in the United States comes from the far left. Here's the problem with actually tabulating it. When you are fed statistics, there are lies, damn lies in statistics, keep this in mind, by the ADL, the SPLC, etc., and they talk about political violence in the United States or terrorist incidents in the United States, and they're like, well, it skews heavily to the right. That's for several reasons. In the terrorism case, it's because Islamic terrorism is inevitably lumped in with the far right. They've construed those as conservative movements based on religious traditionalism. If you lump religious traditionalism in as a political movement, yeah, of course, the far right is butcherous. That's because religious fundamentalists have a problem with occasionally bombing things or blowing things up or shooting people, maybe like at the Pulse nightclub. Hey, look, a bunch of gay people. Bam, bam, bam. This isn't categorized as Islamo-fascist extremism under certain statistical models. It's classed as far right because it was against gay people. Did you know that, by the way? All the people that were shot at the Pulse nightclub? That's how it's tabulated sometimes. That's problem number one. Problem number two is prosecutorial discretion. Most violent crime in the United States happens in a few dozen major cities. The prosecutors and the police forces in those cities have a revolving door policy when it comes to certain types of crime, of which the left is quite fond. Things like vandalism, things like simple assault, etc. If you have an overburdened police force and a prosecutor who was in part funded by George Soros, you can imagine why 9/10 of those Antifa members don't get booked in the first place. They come in, they say, hey, we saw you got you on video assaulting someone here, fingerprinting. They keep them in jail overnight, and then they get sprung. And then they disappear and they never get charged. They just drop the charges. Well, if you drop 90% of the charges related to political violence in the whole United States, just in a few dozen cities, which are lopsidedly far left, pertinent to riots and protests and stuff that involve Antifa or Black Bloc or BLM, no shit. That shaves quite a bit off the far left crime category. But you see, that's lies, damn lies in statistics. Leftoids are the violent ones, by and large. It's like a good gun crime. Most of the gun crime, it's inner city, it involves handguns and stuff. The face of gun crime that they want to portray is the redneck fucking half-toothless dude with Budweiser cans behind him and suspenders and a flannel shirt, and he's got like 5 AR-15s. That kind of gun violence is exceptionally rare in the United States. It doesn't even necessarily happen in Redneckville. A lot of times it involves school shootings, unfortunately. That's sometimes in urban areas too. The bulk of the gun crime that isn't related to suicide or negligence, it's at least they weren't trying to kill anyone, but they were loading the gun, it went off, shot someone's cat or whatever. That's unfortunate, but they didn't mean to kill anybody. If you take just willful homicide and assault and spree shootings and stuff like that, it's lopsidedly urban, involves handguns and certain demographics that we won't mention on YouTube because, again, lies, damn lies, and statistics, honk, honk. You're not allowed to talk about that. Leftoids don't want to understand this or to admit it. Mostly it's leftoids know, but they won't admit to it. Liberals are just stupid. They just don't know. They don't understand basic math, I guess. They don't really teach it in school now. Thanks to No Child Left Behind and Common Core, those standards have been dumbed down multiple times, so it becomes a little bit of a problem. Now, Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. There's a pretty good chance that this is found by the court. It's not certain, but people need to stand up and speak out because you'd be assured the leftoids will be there doing the normal thing. There'll be a little bit of pre-game violence probably from the leftoids anyway. Why aren't there thousands of people picketing outside the courthouse with signs supporting Rittenhouse, making sure that people know it's the other side is capable of rallying too, and they're getting kind of pissed at the differential prosecution of perps or potential perps in criminal cases based on politics. Even when you have video evidence that basically corroborates the person's storyline, and Rittenhouse like, I was there to fight fires, I got attacked. Well, yeah, that's what happened. We got video of it. Thank you, iPhone users. You know, your crapple product finally came in useful for once. That's about all. Peace out.